Hi there and welcome to GKR Heavy Hitters. Is it any good? And the next question is, how do we even answer that? So what is it that makes a good game? Now, seeing as how the channel's name is Cinematic Tabletop Gaming, the first question is it cinematic? The answer is yes, it's cinematic. Look at it, it's beautiful. The huge buildings, which when compared to your average sized fruit bowl or house plants, stand up. They're not dwarfed, they're not tiny. You're not looking at a bunch of sort of 28mm minis battling it out. You're looking at, well, a bowl of fruity goodness where every mech is well sized. Compared to your average sized banana, these mechs are not small. They stand up. Satsumas are dwarfed by them. And just look at the array of beautiful decals that the actual core models come with. These are frankly battlefield ready. I mean, okay, they are not a top level painting championship standard of painting, but they come with all these decals. There's a lot of transfer fun, and transfer fun is not fun, if you know what I mean. And it means that they're ready straight out of the box. You can play this instantaneously, and okay. So the little guys, they don't come painted, but they've got a wash on them. It's a start. And also the plastic isn't awful. Give them a good clean and maybe use some matte enamels just to touch in some black areas like you can see on the cards for them. And they'll be beautiful. And also, the buildings may be cardboard, but look at the beautiful print jobs on them. And even when you destroy them, they fall down and you've got a lovely ruin underneath, which again, if you want the beauty of the fully painted experience, you can paint them in. Or just give them a wash and a dry brush. It should be fine. But we run into some problems. Despite the beauty of this game, it's not quite sure what it is. So is it that minis game, or is it a deck building game with these huge decks of factions all heaping up one after the other, as you have to decide which pilot you want, which faction you want, and then build your mech and get ready for combat and So you've got your battle board, you've built your battlefield, you're all ready to go, and you just want to get your mechs and start fighting, right? And you roll your dice and you think, yes, I've got this good score, I'm going to be going first, only to discover that no, actually you're just a glory hound. You've just adopted yourself this somewhat angry but beautiful little doggy, and what you actually now have to do is make a whole series of decisions in some kind of pre-game mini-game, which turns out to be two pre-game mini-games. The first one is the moment you've all been waiting for, where you finally get to pick which of these giant killer robots you get to use as your main heavy hitter, and the faction therefore you'll be fighting with. But what you don't expect is the pitter-patter of all the pilots, which you then have to pick from among 8 characters, each of which is unique, has a unique ability, and when it's picked, it's vetoed. No one else can have them, only you. Now, I've got this guy, you can't have him. First time players, reading all the rules, these 8 characters, the one you've picked on, everybody else wants, because it's the one with the rules that make sense, and suddenly you can't have them. And then just when you're ready to play, along comes mini game number 2, the deck building aspect. Or should I say, the deck building aspect Part 1. So your mech's in place, you've chosen your pilot, you've put your pilot on the achievement track, which I haven't even got to yet, and then you're assailed with all of these options, and you've got to pick a primary weapon, and you've got to pick 2 secondary weapons, and you don't know what they do, and you don't really have time to look at the stats properly and weigh in the thing. You might end up taking, I'll take this and this and this, these look like they're pretty good, only to realise once you're playing the game that, oh no, none of them have got range 1, oh. And your opponent stood right next to you, just wailing on you, shooting you over and over and over again, and there's nothing you can do about it because you just don't have a range 2 attack. And then on top of that, you get told there is a starter deck building thing, but it doesn't matter. They then go, have deploy cards, and you don't know what they do, and then they're like, orbital strikes, and then they're like, defensive cards and movement cards, and make up the rest of your deck out of these, and you look through them and you're not sure whether they're any good or which ones are useful or not, and in the game you find out that they're mostly not useful because they're so circumstantial and so specific. I mean, how you don't often get shot in the back, but you can defend against being shot in the back, and it might not happen in the entire game. And then also there's the stat cards for your things. You're not sure whether they're a weapon or not, so you put them in your deck to be a weapon, only to discover that they're not a weapon. You have to keep them separately so that when you deploy these units, you've got the stat cards for them, and you haven't even started playing the game. So now you're set up, you're ready to go, you think you vaguely understand your deck, you've drawn your first hand of cards, and you're looking at them wondering how the hell does this work anyway. You're looking through and you look up and you've got your achievement board, you've got your pilots on the achievement board, you've got these random little tabs which match with the symbols on here, so when you get to here you flip this and you get better at something, and in fact they're the wrong way round even, and this is the level of confusion you will have at this point, because these are meant to flip and you get better, not worse, and these help you to win the game. And then you suddenly realise also that when you tag you get one of these, which is a sponsor card, and you look at the sponsor card and you go, oh, that's really great, isn't it? And this is part 2 of your deck building game. So and then there are all these new cards that you suddenly realise you get, and you want to get them because it might be something awesome, like you can hack someone and they have all these wonderful little things like, what's going on? Ha 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 ha, systems offline, and hashtag Control-Alt-Delete. But then again, the other player might have a counter hack and they counter hack you, and it's like, bite me script kiddie. Better luck next time. Except that then you steal initiative that you don't want to steal, because it turns out that the mini game on the achievements board wants you to get initiative only by winning initiative at the end of the turn, and so you don't get that. But then you might get triple threat, which helps you to fight, or you might give someone a bad taco so they've got a real bad case of diarrhea, or you might get a free deployment and be able to deploy that support unit that you didn't have the power for, or you might get gain 2 energy and get told to drink Hapsy. Which brings us to the third and final mini game, which is outside of the fighting each other, giant robots beating each other up, tagging buildings and demolishing buildings game. And that is the achievements track. So each time you go up an achievement with one of these 4 things, which is only really listed here and in the rulebook, which makes it very difficult to observe properly, allow you to move along the achievements board. And each time you hit one of these, you get to flip one of these tokens, which you have next to your mech control panel, which I haven't really got into, but that's actually pretty simple and quite useful. And these improve your skills, but also, if a mech outside of a 2-player game, one of your heavy hitters, is destroyed, that ends the game, and you actually add up points based on how much damage you have not taken, so like how healthy your mech is, plus how far along this achievements board you've actually made it. And so you're left with this quandary. You need to collect the cards for tagging buildings so you can have the sponsor cards so that you can do the amazing things. You need to achieve the achievements in order to get across the achievements board, in order to score points if it makes the first thing to be destroyed, or heavy hitter I should say. These are GKRs, giant killer robots. Even though they're piloted, they're not really robots, but that's another debate for another day perhaps. And you find yourself a bit lost and buried, and it begs the question, what are you, GKR? Are you a board game? Are you a tabletop war game? Are you a deck building game? An area control game? What are you? And the game says something along the lines of,
I am everything.
It leaves you slightly confounded. Especially when we consider that there is one last final issue to deal with, and that's the rulebook itself. And also the kind of complete lack of quick reference. If we're to believe these quick reference, the only things that matter is attack and defend. Except there's a lot more to the game than that, and the only place that you'll actually find how the turn operates is buried at the back of the book in an awkward to find place, especially because when we flick back to the front, although it's beautiful, we find achievement board and upgrades, page 34. Oh, except it's not. It's page 33, because the actual list of contents isn't accurate. And also, there's no proper quick reference. There's also an advanced book with some additional rules which are also very interesting and make the game a richer possibility for the future. But it suffers from all of these knockbacks and drawbacks. So we find ourselves staring forlornly out across this wonderful landscape of tall buildings, giant robots, where we can demolish everything, we can destroy one another, and also we find ourselves in the midst of a 4-player tabletop war game. How often do you get to do that? Not very often, but also it has all of the traits of a board game. Is this perhaps the ultimate crossover game, or maybe attempting too much too soon? It's a very enjoyable game. When I've played it, it has given me all kinds of interesting tactical dilemmas, decisions to make. Every turn has a ton of interest, and if you play it enough, and that might be the crux of it, if you play it enough, you might just find that this is one of the most pleasurable gaming experiences that you ever have. But it has its drawbacks, and it could do with an app for the decks of cards so that you and your group of gaming friends don't actually have to spend the first hour of gameplay working out what your decks are. It'd be really great if you could, Weta Workshop, not that you'll ever see this probably, but what the hey, have an app where you can build your decks. You can look at all of the individual decks of cards and save each deck that you want for each pilot, and you can turn up and you can be like, oh well, I didn't get the pilot that I wanted, but it doesn't matter, I've already built a deck for this faction with every pilot anyway, or at least for some other pilots, so that if I don't get the one that I want, I at least have some options and I know what I'm doing and I can review the cards, just like any other war game really, because otherwise you're kind of asking several people to each invest £130, or I'm not sure how much it is in US dollars, I'm afraid, only to find out that it's as complicated as Adeptus Titanicus. But it does have one key advantage still, and that's not to be pushed away or ignored, and that is, this is a 4-player game. In fact, I'm going to show you ways of playing this with more than 4 players, which some might think insane, and certainly my experience of learning this game is it probably takes about 4 hours, maybe 5 to play from out of the box, and that was with me having played solo and learnt the rules myself, so I could teach people the rules very quickly and easily. But whether you want it or not, that's up to you. I think if you want a tabletop game where giant robots go to town on one another, you get to demolish whole cities, and you get to exist in the world of Weta Workshop, where you get all these wonderful catchphrases, advertising slogans, and it's a rich world, maybe this is the game for you. But that's for you to decide. Thank you for watching, have a good one, and take care. Bye bye.